All right, I think we're live, everybody. Yeah. Well, welcome everybody as you start joining in. There's lots of folks joining early. That's great to see. As you sort of come into the webinar, again, you're early. So we just thought we'd get conversational here. As you see, we'd love if you are in the chat, what AI tools or prompts, it can be personal usage, like what do you see in there? Well, people are coming in fast. So we'll let everybody feel free in the ChatGPT. Cool. Yeah, what are you using? What
Favorite.
tools? Mary, what do you use? I mean, personally, do you use any other tools? Anything you use outside of work? Copilot, said you know?
Oh, I use ChatGPT. I just planned a week-long vacation to Yellowstone. It gave me everything, right? Gave me suggestions, car routes, everything. So it's such a powerful tool.
Yes.
Copilot, Gemini, Grok.
I'll tell you, I can't take credit for this, but my colleague Cindy, she's probably somewhere in here. She and I am guilty. Like I feel like our kitchen needs a revamp. When you get, the recipe that's like, design the, it's a, baking brownies, and you need a, 8-inch square pan. I'm like, well, I have like a 6 round or a, and she taught me, she's like, throw it into ChatGPT, and
And it'll adjust the recipe. That's really
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the kind of stuff. So Perplexity, our CEO loves Perplexity. I've
Yeah.
been using that a bit. Voila, superhuman email, ChatGPT. Nice, interesting. I love the like, what are you prompting? Doesn't have to be work related,
Hmm.
because it's just 2 o'clock here on the East. So we'll give everybody another minute or two. Can it bake brownies for me? Yeah, that's the fear, though, right? Is that it's going to be able to break brownie. Design graphics using ChatGPT. Yeah,
That's
Joe, you're going to see some today. Mary, I will say you were
well,
great at
yeah,
explaining.
ChatGPT is through like what has improved in the last couple of months with 4.0. It's just incredible.
Anne brings up a good point. Prompts question mark. Literally anything that used to be Google. That's
Yes.
such a great point. And I think most people are surprised to find out Google now that first set of results really is, Canva magic
Pulling
right
from an
there.
LLM. Yeah. Well, I think they have to make those changes in order to stay relevant, right?
Yeah. And that's, I think, what's going to be interesting to see, how this gets integrated in different products and stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the interest, I know some people use it, meal prepping. Yeah. Recipes. Yeah. Yeah. Claude. I use it,
Yeah.
Claude.
I
Well,
love Canva. So I was just on a webinar yesterday. We'll talk about it a little bit in a little while, but Canva has this next level and it is just spectacular with what it can do. You can manage your entire marketing campaign and it's really cool.
Art Smart AI. Hey, Marla, it's good to see you. Better the graphics. Yeah. All right. Well, if you know me, many of you do on this. Mary and I probably have about 3 days worth of content to squeeze in about an hour. So normally we spend longer on some of these things, but I want to get us into the good meat of the presentation today because again, we've got so much content. Good news is you'll get a recording after this. So feel free. You don't have to worry about taking screenshots or things like that. We're going to share it. I know Mary and our team too on this side. We have a ton of resources to give you. So Kathleen, yeah, ChatGPT blast email subject line, so handy. If you have any issues, typically just log out and log back in. We've got both the Q&A feature and the chat feature live today. Mary and I will do the best. Again, we've got a ton of content, so we'll try to either weave through some of them as we go, or some of them we may get to at the end. Also, bonus, I know we'll keep you to an hour, but Mary has been so kind to agree that we're happy to stay on afterwards for some additional questions because we're probably going to struggle to get to them all. We've also got another bonus for everyone is that we want to challenge you in about a month or two. We're going to reconvene this group. And so we're hoping that what you take today, you're going to come back and Mary and I are going to sort of do an Ask Me Anything, another session around this topic. So, right. Speaking of Mary, I do want to introduce her. We've been on a bunch of panels together. We have been to conferences together and seen each other's sessions. So I'm incredibly grateful given her 25 plus years in association management across diverse industries. I mean, and she really is somebody that I will save that word and we'll talk about that. But I really is a pioneer and explorer in AI, and that hopefully sums it up. She's also part of Stringfellow Management Group, which is an amazing AMC company. What I love about your experience, Mary, is you're seeing it across your entire client base as associate. You see it small, big, different type, every industry, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that her perspective, I think, is so critical today. She's again part of the president of the association consulting group, VP of client relations, and again, I consider a friend of mine. So, Mary, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Rich. I'm really excited about this.
I'll skip through me. Most people ask about my title wonk. Really, it's just about somebody who thinks or studies about something a lot. The Urban Dictionary defines it as an expert in a field, someone who's fairly young and very intelligent. Basically, my hairline and my waistline will tell you I'm not young and I'm far from very intelligent, but I love studying this. And even every time Mary and I have gotten on the call to talk about this, I think we continue to learn. I've spent most of my career in events, marketing, associations, and like Mary, get to work across and with so many different clients like that. Super excited. Someone asked, will this be recorded? Yes, we will have this recorded. Well, Mary, I hesitate because I start always to call you an AI expert, but you've cautioned me to use that word.
Yeah, because, I don't know anybody that I would consider an AI expert except for those people who are actually developing these tools. What I consider myself is somebody who's not afraid to take chances with this, right? And I think that's really key. So everybody put their explorer hats on. We'll set up some safety guardrails and we'll talk about how to move forward with this, or at least from my perspective, how we're moving forward.
That's a great way. So we are all explorers today. I will say I won't leave this on for long, but the QR codes will stay up the next couple slides. I know Mary shares out a lot of content around this topic. I do as well. If you've never done this, fire up your phone, fire up LinkedIn. You hit that little sort of search bar, you get a QR code. And like I said, connect with this. Obviously looked on LinkedIn, but this is the quick way. In the interest of time, conveniently, I've put these QR codes on the next couple slides. So Mary, why should everyone in our audience start thinking about this now?
Well, I think there's an opportunity. I mean, there's so many things. First of all, let's face it, we have all been thrown onto this journey, like it or not, right? So we're either going to have it take over or we're going to take some ownership and figure out how we move forward. And I think starting these conversations, because I haven't really seen conversations happening with association people. And I think it's time that we normalize the conversations and bring it into our day-to-day activity.
And that's why I feel like there's been a post-pandemic hamster wheel, and so we're all looking for shortcuts. I feel like this is most of our association clients, right? We're all multitasking.
Absolutely. I've never heard of an association executive say that they had extra time, right?
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, AI is really cool because we'll be able to automate things that we have not been able to easily automate in the past. So it's an opportunity.
Yeah, do more, do less, do more with less. And I agree with you. I think, really been studying it, heavily for the past couple of years. And I feel like that was sort of the ripeness in the audience to say, hey, we're all tasked as association professionals to do more with less. But what's been interesting, Mary, is I feel like this is starting to occur. AI has been at various levels, lots of conversations, don't you think?
Yeah, there has to be some normalization to discussing AI. Your teams are using AI, whether or not you know exactly what they're using or what use cases. It's so ubiquitous at this point. We need to talk about it and we need to start considering upskilling the workforce.
And I think that's what, I was hoping to find a newer statistic, but I think this is still fairly recent and I think relevant.
Yeah.
75% of employees are currently using AI across work at various industries, and half of them started using it in the last 6 months. I mean, that's the shift that's occurring, right?
Yeah. So, and this tracks, Rich, with what we're doing at SMG. We've been tracking usage over the past 12 to 18 months, and we did a company-wide poll last in March, and 73% of our employees are using Gen AI, most of it in the LLM area, Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot, and Gemini. But I think as we move forward with this, understanding the use cases are going to help us understand automation in the future. So it's a good idea to track what your people are doing.
Well, that sort of leads us into this real concept of member value because we're every association and organization is like, how can we drive member value? And I'm not sure everyone has thought about AI as providing member value to associations.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think because one, everything is moving so fast every day, you blink and there's new tools that are out there. But if we can take a step back and think a little bit more strategically about what AI can do for our members, I think that's where we should be focusing attention, at least short term, looking long term. So associations, what are we? We're repositories for information, right? But we're really not that great at getting information the way that our members want it and when they want it. So AI will give us the opportunity to deliver 24/7 access to information. It'll allow us to do personalized membership experiences and create fast, reliable support. And the other thing we need to think about is changing demographics, right? We've got a younger workforce. The expectation is to get information in their hands now. And we as associations are not set up for that. And we need to do that. Otherwise, we're going to be having competition delivering that for us. So that's why I think it's so important to member value.
Yeah, I have a teenager at home. I'll loan out to any organization here today if you'd like to see about expectations, demands about the next generation.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I also want to call out, ASAE has really said this is like one of the four pillars and of what we should think about. I know, Mary, you guys certainly have a feeling about this.
I do. I was lucky enough to go through some training, and if you aren't familiar with ASA Foresight Works, I recommend you getting familiar with it. It's a great foundation for how we can bring futures thinking to our organizations. They update their drivers pretty frequently. It's kind of like on a rotation. And the last time I checked, they have at least three drivers of change dealing with AI: ethical innovation, personalized AI, and preventing AI risks. But it's going to be kind of melding through their other technology ones because it's so ubiquitous, like I said. So this will help us frame what we're doing and think strategically about implementing AI in our activities in the future.
Well, and stay tuned on this. I know we've got some actual live demos with some ASAE areas later because I know a lot of folks were like, help me get started, and we certainly want to cover that. Well, actually, a colleague shared this with me, and I know, Janelle, I see you on, so I do want to give credit. Grammarly came up with this, and there's a ton of, adoption strategies. But this one really sort of stood out. And, as Mary and I have worked through this, it's how we're going to frame the rest of the day. We're going to poll you on this because we want to see where everyone is. But before we poll them, Mary, can you kind of just, give us a sentence or two, a talking point for them to think about these so when we ask them shortly, how they can answer?
Sure. And I think that I've seen this framework from other consultant types of reports. So aware is we're all in the awareness. If you're not aware of AI at this point, you're living under a rock, right? So we've got curiosity about it. We're doing some usage, and leaders are starting to formulate some plans about how they're going to integrate this. The next phase is experimenting. And again, I think many of us, just based on the chat here, are testing AI tools in small ways: ChatGPT, Claude. Most people start with content generation. It's kind of low risk, trial and error. The next level is optimizing. And Rich and I, as we were putting this program together, we kind of looped optimizing and standardizing because it'll flow back and forth. But optimization is embedding it into daily operations and across teams and expanding the use cases and learning tools as we go along. Standardizing is make it more routine, right? We're looking to improve workflows. We're understanding our process mapping. It's saving time for us, and it's enhancing member experiences. And then the final one is kind of like the aha moment of transforming it, right? So we've got the tools in place. We've done experimentation. Now we're looking at how do we use AI in a transformative way in our strategic planning, in our anticipatory outcomes, and innovating our member solutions and products.
Well, that's a
Now
great
I'm not
setup.
there. I don't know anybody that's there yet.
Yeah, don't feel bad.
Right.
And so I'll cue up our Mary to get ready for the poll. But our goal today too is to hopefully move you at least one rung up the bar today. So, but again, we want quick poll. Be honest. Great. It's one of my favorite AI generated images that I've created. We want you to be honest. So, Mary, if you can fire up the poll, we really want to know where you are. Be honest. Help us understand where you think you are organizationally. Mary, in general, where do you think you are? Where do you think you are? Because I think I've always said it's easy for the tech guy, but I still feel like I'm in that experimenting stage. I'm starting to
Oh, yeah.
standardize, but
I definitely feel like I'm in the experimenting. I'm thinking what I'm trying to do is set our company up. And again, we've got 20 some associations, we've got different teams, they're all different industries. So the needs are very unique and very different. But thinking through the processes that we do internally and also thinking about the member needs, that is setting the basis up for when these tools, especially agentic AI, goes full force into the association market, we're ready to start adopting some of these.
all right, well, why don't we go ahead and Mary, if you could close that poll and hopefully share the results. Not everyone got to take it, but interesting. Yeah, okay. So 16% in the where, about 69% in experimenting. That's awesome. 12% in optimizing. Hopefully you can contribute today. If you feel free to chat to talk about that. Some standardizing, one in transforming. What's AI too? Love it. That's don't feel bad. I think that is a lot of folks, and we're glad you're here. And so we'll keep going, but that's it. That's what we're seeing. Folks are really in that sort of aware experimenting, and so we're hoping to move you to there. And so that's really, I think to be honest with you, last year I went out really hard thinking about AI. I know Mary and I talked about some of these things, and what we've really come to realize is that we really need to talk about like what are the stages of readiness, because I think there's so much noise out there. How do we get ready? And Mary, even funny, we move some of these even as we discussed it more. And Mary, I think when we talk about empowering people, isn't this everyone's big fear?
Yes. When you first showed this slide to me 2 years ago, I laughed. It was a very easy way to laugh, like, yeah, that's never going to happen. But then you start watching stuff as it unfolds and the stories that are told. Not that I think that my job or any of our positions are going to be replaced by robots, but the workforce is going to be impacted. I think we're already seeing that at the government level. I just read an article that talked about AI first. This is a new approach to hiring, right? Duolingo is no longer hiring contract employees. They are looking at they're keeping their full-time employees, but outside employees are not, or contractors aren't going to be brought in anymore. They're looking at solutions that can be driven by AI, so automating their systems. The same thing with Shopify. So I think that we need to be mindful of that, and it's a discussion that we need to have with our staff, right? Because people look at this and they think, I'm going to be out of a job in 6 months. You need to start having that dialogue with the people at your company, because there are legitimate fears with the changes that are coming down the pike.
I think that's what one of the things. I see someone has their hand raised. Go ahead and pop the question either in the Q&A or the webinar chat, and we'll try to get to it. But isn't AI cheating? And I think that's what, when I've been out just talking with our clients and presenting, there's this sort of fear around it. And I think it's sort of landed on this AI HOV lane, right? We're still getting from point A to point B. And in most cities, I know Mary and I are in the greater DC area or whatever, sometimes you have to pay for those HOV lanes. But we're just going to get there faster.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily cheating. And I think, I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, that's what I could finally take to my boss and say, look, I'm still doing the work. I'm just going to get there faster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I'm using GPTs for various, I'll call them either really smart assistants or interns. And it helps me in various aspects. I'm using it for strategic planning, for research, for writing, summarization of things. And again, just thinking about some of the changes that are happening in the for-profit world. There was an article that I read that it was an email that was sent to all the employees, and the company is Fiverr, which is a gig-based system for freelancers. It's they have about 800 employees. Their CEO sent an email to all of their employees that said, AI is coming for your job. Heck, it's coming for mine. And the gist of this was, you must understand that was once considered an easy task will no longer exist because of AI. What is considered a hard task will now become the new easy task. And what was considered the impossible task will now be the new hard. So there's opportunities here, and it's just so obvious that we need to work on upskilling our teams.
Yeah, don't get me started on things like VLOOKUP and data. And I know someone asked about ethics and environmental human costs. We'll certainly talk about that later. But let's talk about this awareness stage, because that's where most people are, right? You're just sort of curiosity is bubbling up. You're sharing articles. That's where most people are, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's important that we take some steps as we're in this readying stage for experimentation and later on. What are the steps that we need to consider to make sure that we're moving forward safely?
All right, so let's talk about those. Let's talk about that AI safety policy development.
Right. So, I think if your groups are using AI and you don't have a policy in place, that's a mistake. You really need to do that. And I'm going to walk through setting up a policy. You can't assume that people on your teams are going to know what personally identifiable information is, or what intellectual property is, or proprietary information. You need to define those things. And then, the next level that you should be looking at are what types of risk management. Get in touch with your insurance brokers. Are your general liability and cybersecurity policies in place? We also need a mechanism of tracking federal, state, and international regulations and legislation. I think one of the things, Rich, you and I had talked about was, how does culture play a part in this, and change management? And I think that's an important discussion, even one that has to happen internally with staff teams, but also with your board. Where is everybody head around AI at this point? And again, making sure that your team has an avenue to be able to express concerns.
And I think even ethical use in some of these things, are going to vary by organization, and every organization may take a different stance on that. But
Absolutely.
but thinking about, again, today, we hope you walk away with that sort of those high value tasks. You just mentioned it, free up that time.
Yeah.
But now, Mary, I know you've done a lot of training and education. So talk about what you think you should think about for teams, and then maybe yourself.
Yeah, well, I went, and this is a shout out to Sidecar, which has the Association AI Professional designation. It's a great program to really look at the theory and application side of associations using AI. But there's a ton of training resources out there. And maybe I'm part wonk too, but I've been collecting that stuff, Rich, for the last several months. And I did put together a resource that we will share. It's all different types of training that you and your teams can consider doing. I would say prompt engineering courses are really key. Even if you think you're a good prompter, take the course, because it'll help you better understand how the models work and how to pull out the information that you're looking for. Focus on practical applications, right? And then make sure, and this is something that is so critical, have routine conversations, right? Talk about it with staff and start putting it on your board agenda so that they're aware of how you're moving forward, and it's a transparent dialogue.
Mary, everyone's heartbeat just skipped when you said talk about this with your board. Can you give the audience a little bit of a pep talk, or how they should consider that? Because I know before we get that question, that's going to be a question.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in trust, establishing trust through transparency, right? So if you've developed a safety policy, share that with your board. Get your board's input on that, right? It's going to be evolving. I think we're going to wind up seeing iterations to the policies that we put in place. What are the do's and what are the don'ts? Talk about it, but get it on your board's agenda so that when you start doing these more external member-facing types of applications, they're aware of what's involved and they can be a partner in that decision-making process.
Yeah, I serve on the board, and we've started that conversation, and it's not an easy one, but I think that's what sort of led us to. It's like, this is a fluid conversation. It's not carving a rock. You don't get to put this on a rock in the association safe and be done. These are not your bylaws. it's time to, really think
Yeah,
about this fluid. Well, I know, Mary, you want to say, because a lot of people say, well, Rich, what about this policy? And so now bear with us. We're going to do some more live demonstrations because we really want you to take away something. So tell us more about Stellar. And Mary, I'm going to let you share your screen.
sure. Thanks, Rich. So Stellar is, sorry, here on my share screen here. Okay. Stellar is a large language model that has been trained on ASAE's information, right? And so it's not like a typical chat bot. What it is it is it's looking at this repository of information that's available through ASAE, and it is allows for dialogue to go back and forth with this bot. So I keyed in here previously, so you didn't see my typos. I am creating an AI safety and usage policy for my association. What resources are available at ASAE that can help me, right? So I'm going to click this, and there she is. She's thinking.
I feel like Reggie, their CTO over there at ASE, is like cheering us on right now. So
Okay. So what it does, it returns resources that are available at ASAE. And the thing that I like about this is that this particular type of a knowledge bot, because it's trained just on an association's information, it reduces the risks for hallucinations, which I know we're all familiar with. So I'm going to take this to the next level, and I have another prompt here that I'm going to put in here. I want it to help me draft an AI policy outline based on insights from ASAE. And it's thinking. And voila, this is a fantastic place to start if you don't have a policy. You can see all of the different areas that it's going to go through. And this is an outline that you can take to your boards as you're starting to develop this process or the safety guidelines, right? So I will stop sharing, but I do want to say it's asaecenter.org/resources/stellar. Grab that. And I'll stop sharing, Rich.
all right. Well, let's
Okay.
see if we can all make this work here. All right, back. Hopefully everyone's seen. All right, so Mary, now we're on to getting data ready. And I think one of the things that, we hear that this is a stumbling block is like, how do we think about getting our data and systems ready? Because, you know, this again is another fear point that I don't want sometimes people to trip up. There's a lot to think about, but don't let that trip you up. And so, think about this, Mary. Where should they start in considering as they start thinking about data? What about a data audit?
Yeah, a few people had mentioned this to me at different seminars that I've attended over the last few months. And I think it's really true that we may not actually have a complete list of where our data lives, right? We know we've got an AMS or a CRM. We may have an LMS. We've got Conference app, various distribution lists. Maybe you have information that's floating in a Google Drive. It's really important to do a data audit even before you start looking at whether or not your data is clean. So, and I think that's really important step to take as we start moving, because what you're going to start doing is integrating and creating interfaces between some of these data repositories to be able to use some of these tools moving forward. So it's really important to understand what kind of data you have and then start looking at how clean is the data, right? Another thing is your data governance. And there's a report that was developed by Sumatra Consulting Organization, Data Privacy and Compliance, What Every Association Should Know in 2025. Rich, can you put that into the chat, that link?
Yep.
Because I think it's an
Yep.
important download for everyone. So what that covers is it's looking at GDPR, California like state mandated updates, AI and privacy challenges. It's looking at evolving privacy laws, new compliance and regulations. I found this particularly interesting. It's bias and discrimination. It's addressing that, especially for associations who are doing credentialing. They must ensure that the models they're using are free from unintended biases. So it does go into some depth into that report in that area. We also need to implement robust data governance as part of the safety protocol. So that's something that you might want to pull into your query for ASAE.
Well, thank you, Mary. I was having
Yep.
trouble copying and pasting, and I
Yeah,
was
no, I
afraid
just saw that pop up. Thank you.
I
Okay.
was afraid I
Yep.
was going to screw it up. So,
No, that's okay. So do you want to talk a little bit about the tech systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, something too that, like, you do some of this audit. And again, I don't want people to trip over those kind of words, but like, what systems contain that data that might be useful? And I think we're going to try that in the next slide. We're going to start talking about, ways to think about this. So you may actually come back from 3 to 2 to do some of this. What systems already have AI capability? Because a lot more and more systems, are building that in to use, because then you don't have to take your data elsewhere. And also, sometimes I think people get caught up, we get hung up on data. There's a lot you can do without data, and I think the
Absolutely.
default action sometimes has just been like, oh, we use it for marketing, or, but there's a lot out there. I do a session on AI around events. I mean, just different things about generating tweets or reviewing contracts, or coming up with that stinking speaker bio that the speaker won't submit, by simply popping in a LinkedIn profile. I mean, there's just other things that aren't requiring data to worry about some of those things. And I think that's sort of where we get to stage 3, Mary, because this is where hopefully too we're going to inspire you a little. Because I think, again, everyone gets caught up in, oh my God, my team's not ready, my data's not ready. But it's because you're not actually linking the sort of, the in use cases. And so, Mary, let's talk about this experimenting phase that most of us are in. Thoughts on this?
Sure. So at this point, you have your ducks kind of in a row. You've got a safety policy. You are looking at what your governance considerations are, risk management. Now, I think this is the fun part, right? Your teams are now aware of how they can use tools, how they can't use tools. So you start allowing experimentation, right? You know, there's so many different types of tools out there. And I think a lot of people will gravitate to some of the creative ones, like creating the superpower version of themselves as an upload. But there's so many dynamic tools that are changing, allow for experimentation.
Well, I will say Mary's inspired me. She's used a great use of using cartoons in her PowerPoints. And this is my first created, so bear with me. It was fun. So again, credit to Mary is, because I had a bunch of bullets, which sometimes you do in PowerPoints. And I was like, what's a fun way? I'm going to take Mary's inspiration. And I think that's what, again, if you could start with these pain points, talk to your team. Don't say this is an AI exercise. Well, you can. But like, what's frustrating them? What are the pain points? What are the things that take, I was talking to someone this morning and they were saying like, we were trying to look at, session data from a conference, and, just those are the things that take somebody a long time. Now, when you say, wait, maybe you could use AI. So when you sort of see that mess first, before you start like, thinking of AI, like what's clunky, what's slow, what's repetitive, because that's where you can say, hey, that may take 3 hours. AI could do it in one. Well, most AI doesn't take an hour of anything, but usually
Right.
that,
Like 1 minute, maybe.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. That one is really like a
Right.
minute,
Yeah.
um, and that creates the like real return on value versus sort of the hype, right? Because I think that's the hard part, Mary, right? Like so many people hear the hype, but if they could see like, oh wait, that used to take me 3 hours. I asked it very carefully. It gave me something. Yes, it needs a minute. Yes, whatever. Now it's a minute.
Absolutely.
And
I
I
couldn't
think that's
agree
what
more.
out there too. I think as you talk about AI, you kind of make it click for everyone, because it's not about getting AI. It's just their routine daily task.
Yeah.
And most of us have a ton of them, right?
Yeah.
And this last bullet is like avoid the random AI experience. We are not discouraging experimentation, but like don't throw tools at problems. Understand what are the challenges, and then build from how to think about AI from that. Because a lot of the tools that we're already talking about can solve some of these things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Mary, I
I
know
think
you
it's
want
a
to go ahead.
really, and that is a great point, Rich, because I think that, we're starting to move towards strategically looking at what we do on a day-to-day basis and where AI can play a role, right? And that's where, AI agents are already out there. I'm sure it'll be it'll be around the corner when we're starting to use those very frequently.
Well, I know you've just we've got a whole slide. I know you don't want to cover all these, but just to
No.
sort of talk about areas that you're seeing and you're using.
Yeah, and Rich, in case anybody wants to take a screenshot of this, why don't you kind of advance through it so they all come up? And I'm going to highlight just a couple of them. But these are single use cases. And again, we've been documenting what we're doing at SMG for the past 12 plus months. And we look at this as sort of an R&D lab, right, of what our workflow is and what use cases are going to provide you. They're going to provide you with what's that low-hanging fruit of things that can be automated, right? So we're really leaning into prompt engineering, smarter, more tailored prompts to drastically improve the quality of our AI output, right? Some of my prompts in recent weeks have been 2, maybe 3 paragraphs long. And the reason for that is that context in your prompt is really a powerful aspect of bringing out the information that you're looking for. I'll say it throughout this whole webinar. Safety first, keep the human involved. It's so important to making sure that you are verifying the information that you get back. Ask for citations in your prompts, and then go check your citations, because citations, if you're out there on the web, can be hallucinations as well. On the content side, if you start with a single blog post, you can transform that into dozens of outputs, social media snippets, emails, stories. And I had mentioned before the session started, Canva just released, they're an online design tool, just released their next version. It is incredible with what it can do. It can take an entire marketing campaign and develop all of your posts and your stories, your images, all at like within 5 minutes. It's really very powerful. I love note taking. I think that having that brought into meetings is really great. Follow guardrails about what meetings you're allowed to have in. There's certainly many applications for the creative side. And I think that kind of gets into an ethical question, and we're very sensitive to that at SMG. We have a super creative marketing department, so we're not looking at just throwing everything into a creative AI application. So other
Well,
applications.
I'll pause you there,
Yeah,
Mary, too,
please
because
go ahead.
I'll say that too, is, I find as a creative person too, where I find the shortcut is like, I take to our agency, shout out to 29D, who I love, is, like, here's the concept that we brainstormed in a AI tool, and they're going to now execute and build it. But like, we've skipped all that, so some of those sometimes of like, when we're all like, it's kind of like this,
Yes.
taking that to our creative agency and say, now run with this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good input. It's a great stepping stone to what the output you're looking for, right? So yesterday, I think it was, one of my colleagues and close friend was talking about Google Analytics. We get those monthly reports, and what do you do with them, right? So she took an entire year's worth of Google Analytics for one of her clients, and she fed that into ChatGPT, and she said, give it to me in plain language and analyze it and give me some strategic recommendations. And it churned out this report that now she's able to take that information and help monetize what she'll be doing and looking at sponsorship development. So there's ways that we can use the information that we already have and take that to the next level too.
Well, you threw one in, one of my favorite. I think when you talk about sponsorship, it's amazing when you ask, you give an event website and say, identify sponsors to ChatGPT. It's amazing what it may spit back to you. And like, hey, give me the LinkedIn, give me the information. And there's so many steps like that. We won't get it. I could riff on event too, but that's like an example of each taking these to different layers and trying to understand what was the challenge. We need more sponsors, and I'll kind of walk you through that. But Mary, one of your great illustrations, and I think really sums this up, right?
Yeah, so this is kind of where we are through this presentation at this point in time. If you don't take anything from this, please take this slide with you, right? Create an AI usage and safety policy. Find a champion. And that's something that we really didn't talk about before. And I think that I'm the champion at SMG, and I'm getting people excited about this and building a task force. We need to make sure that it's on our agendas at meetings. We need to be talking about it. Find somebody who is interested in this. I mean, it's got some very cool applications. So if you can find a champion, please do. Upskill your team. I don't think that any of us have a choice. If we're not adopting AI, it's going to be an issue for jobs in the future. Experimentation, have fun, set up the guardrails, use different platforms to see what it can do. Track use cases. Again, I think it's important to do so because those use cases will be the basis for agentic AI as you move forward.
Well, that really sets us up into this next stage, and this is optimizing and standardizing, right? What's this stage? What should this look like? What should everyone be thinking about as they get to that? So we've got some folks that feel like they're at this stage. Feel free to
Yeah.
add in. Mary, what's your take on this?
Well, I think when we were talking, Rich, we said lumping these together is good because you're going to it's somewhat fluid going back and forth with it, and it's going to depend on use cases. We obviously will have a good understanding of what AI can do and how it will work in our universe of the association world. And staff training is underway. Experimentation is in full swing. But now we're looking at agentic AI. It's going to be handling administrative processes, maybe answering emails, giving that customized customer support. And we may even have these trained knowledge assistants like I just showed you on Stellar. Well, we need to start readying ourselves for the next levels based on the process of the workflows that we do. And that's what this is going to take us to, is we've got the use cases. How are we using this? What are those steps involved? And how are we starting to process map some of this stuff?
Well, and you said it, Mary. I think it's really important because it's, again, that sort of panic moment of, oh, this thing's going to do this thing for me. But I think as association professionals, that's going to allow you to connect with your members, connect with your teams, connect, in a way, because a lot of that, like we said, sit down with those things that you spend hours on. If that can be done, effectively through another tool, it allows you to connect with our members and things like that. And that's going to be a shift to say, hey, I'm doing the same job. I'm actually delivering more member value because I'm allowing some of these tools or using some of these tools to give us bigger insights. And I'm going to share a little bit here on a journey of how I think about AI. Is to say, hey, wait a minute, we did some deep analysis. Like, it's amazing if you take surveys. We all take surveys. Associations collect more data than any other organizations out there that I know, maybe other than medical or something. But you collect all this data, you kind of do a quick skim of it, but you never say, hey, let's look deeper. AI is great at looking at that sort of data and pulling out those sort of deeper points. Again, it's a guiding post, but that's where the human comes in, because I'm going to say, hey, Mary, this is what came back in the survey. You did this thing. Can you layer that human aspect in?
Yeah, absolutely. I find a lot of times what is returned through that prompt when you put that information in often gives you an aha moment where you didn't actually think about it to begin with. It's like, oh, wow, what a great idea, right? So it helps for brainstorming and discussion on how to move forward on various items that you're working on.
All right, well, I'm going to switch gears here. Oh, where'd my screen go? All right, well, I'm going to stop sharing for a second, Mary. Uh, Thank you. Oh, great explanation here. So let me stop share because I've lost my one screen here. This is the fun of live time here, right? Feel free to start thinking about questions because we are going to quickly run into the Q&A time here. Sorry, I'm running into a little bit of technical difficulty here. This is where we dance, right? All right, there we go. Okay. All right, so I kind of want to give you an opportunity to show you the way I think about AI, and part of it's through one of our tools where we've built in AI into our MC trade product called Data Insights. And I wanted to show you because I think a lot of the fear and the things that people have are like, this data lives in different places, or how should I think about my AMS and everything that's involved in there. And so I think about it going back to our concept. This is what usually happens to me. Hey, Rich, we're considering launching an event for business investors for small staffs, right? You're like, okay, that's a lot to ask. We're going to launch an event. Here's the kind of audience. Like, where would I start to think about all the different Excel sheets I would pull? And that's where something like, when you've got an AI tool. Now, I will caution, this is Data privacy is extremely important to us at Personify. This is a training database. This data is all kind of a mishmash of stuff we've put in, no client data. So some of these things aren't as beautiful as I've seen in client systems, but that's where like you might say like, okay, I've been tasked with this event. Well, how many members have fewer than 50 FTEs? So now we're again could have pulled all this via Excel. Let's start to think about, I got to decide if this event's viable or not. So we're going to ask it like how many of our members in our association. Okay, 433. Now I could click through this data, and start exploring there. But the boss says, where are we going to host this event? So back to like, well, where are most of our members located? You may know that off the top of your head, but for this event, I'm thinking about the location. So I'm going to ask it the simple question of saying, where are members located? So now we're pulling member data. Looks like we've got some empty data. We've all got, data that needs some cleanup. But now maybe we should look at, Belleville and Cabot as a potential location. So now you're starting to see how we do this. I might say, okay, well, let's go and think about, we've got to have a lot of event data in our AMS. You know, my boss said we're really interested in certain areas. So, show me attendance by membership level. So you're starting to see again where we're taking the task was rich. We want to launch this event. I need to go back to my boss. Now I'm not going to tell her that I only did this in about 10 minutes, because I pulled all this data. Well, interesting. We want to do business investors, not one of our bigger membership levels, but that's okay. So now we got another data point to go back. I'll do one more. I could do this all day, but like back to then again, let's think about what kind of a event do we want to set up? Well, which events brought in the most revenue last year?
And I think this is brilliant because, first of all, I don't know if many AMS systems are offering this. I'm not an expert in that, but I think to be able to have it streamlined, and these questions are in, like a lot of these questions are built in, right?
Yeah,
Members can actually use this, or
yeah.
associations can use this.
I mean, that's the kind of thing like, okay, our fall luncheon, as we think about this new event, maybe we should do a luncheon. Maybe we should dig deeper, to Mary's point. These are the types of things that you start to explore. I mean, I can get super excited. I can ask about like, well, gosh, credit card fees are, exploding. What would, I'll do one here, like, you know, let's see here, uh, show me, let's say, we could ask, which category brings in, who pay their dues less. When you're looking at a sponsor, those are the types of things that you can start to link your membership data. Who uses checks most. I won't get in today because we're probably going to run out of time, but then you start getting to predictive analytics. We're going to talk about that next, is when you start looking at your data and saying, what are the things in our system that we can look at and, see what's most likely to retain. Back to my events example, hey, we see a revenue dip based on forecasting. Maybe that's when we should have the revenue dip. Those are the types of things that really excite me when you start to link. This isn't the end all be all. This is the, how do you start this exploration within your data and you're not taking it, to another moment. So I'm going to switch
And it
gears.
beats pulling all this to an Excel sheet, right? And then if you're going to put it into a chat GPT or something, even if it's the paid version or whatever, I would still always strip any contact information like that. But to be able to run an analysis, it's multiple steps that have been removed by your system that is still doable if you don't have, Personify's system there. But yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, that's why like I have a whole way I think, but that's the kind of questions that I think we get in associations, and then we sort of struggle with, brainstorming. But if you can start to think about asking and connecting membership data and events and revenue and all those things, it really gets me excited. Well, that sort of kind of leads us into this next level. I'm going to skip past that because I actually just showed it to you live. Well, okay, so now we're talking foresight. This is the 400 level part of the class. Don't leave. If don't worry, no, we're not going to flunk anyone out of the 400 level class. But Mary, this is where, you've talked about it. Where should they be thinking about? This is the long term, right?
Yeah, I think I've have alluded to it before, but I do a lot of strategic planning and having that background with foresight works and doing futures thinking. This is such a powerful tool. And I'm going to always call AI a tool because I think a tool is something humans use. And I think it's important to keep that perspective that we should be in control of how these tools are being used. But AI is reshaping how services are delivered, how members are engaging, and even how organizations see their role in the industry. So Rich and I kind of talked through this and came up with these pillars of transformation, if you will. All right. So looking at strategic planning and foresight, scenario planning, again, ASAE's Foresight Works is a great framework to build futures thinking into board and strategy retreats. But the difference between strategic planning and futures thinking is about 7 years, right? Most strategic plans go for 36 months, maybe 5 years, although I think that's been dialed back a good bit. It's futures thinking is looking at signals and how things may be different 10 years out. And I don't think we are doing that by and large in the association world. And it's something that I think we need to start building in. So doing scenario planning, and AI is great to use for ideation, iterative concepts as you're going through the process, futures thinking. There's also revenue growth opportunities that will be transformed. How we define value today inevitably is going to change because of AI. Do I know what that is? No, I don't. But there will be an impact on the association model, either the way that we structure our membership, the way that people get information, the way that we meet, and a lot of different other areas. Demographics are changing, and I talked about before. What are the expectations? What's going to be considered the new normal? So we need to start looking at new streams of revenue that AI will afford. Everybody's talking about, well, there's the expense side of AI and these tools, but we also need to start thinking about what's the monetization side of AI and leverage that, because I do think there's going to be new streams for revenue.
Yeah, and when you start to think about all these bigger pictures, it really is crazy to think that, you can add this into your brainstorming or strategic board retreats or things like that. I mean, I know a lot of folks are thinking about how do we engage our members, in general. And share, I'd love your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, so I think with membership engagement, again, it's increasing the member value, right? We're going to have different tools available to us that will be able to get the information in time. Predictively as well, right? We want to be able to figure out what those needs are, and AI will allow us to do that. Membership engagement activities will inevitably be put on autopilot. So when you have members who are at risk, and a lot of times we're not even tracking that, right? We might do an exit strategy if we're lucky, but preemptively, we'll be able to use AI to flag people who may not have attended different sessions, maybe send out automated surveys, some touch points throughout the year. Members who have specific interests in associations, products, or services can be identified. So it's using it to help us increase the value that we bring to members. And then,
yeah, I think Joe sort of asked about that AI function. And I think that's one of the big things is looking at, try to preemptively saying, like I sort of showed a sneak peek of, from that association, what are the factors that play towards someone attriting? Okay, and then can you then, which leads me to the next one, build marketing communications segment, that's where this gets, like as a small team, a small staff, which most everybody is, doing those things would be really either cost prohibitive, resource prohibited, those sort of things. But you want to talk a little here?
Sure. So I think from marketing, all of these AI is going to allow us to loop all of this stuff together, right? So if you think through the process of having a member, your soon to be lapsed members, automating through multiple agents, one that's designed to do the marketing email blast, sending out evaluations, sending out touch point communications, looking at what's coming up in terms of events that you have planned, segmenting that based on the interest that these people have or whatever their verticals are in the particular industry. All of that stuff can be looped together agentically, right? So that is where I think we're going. And that is the power. So it's not just marketing the way that we do it now, but it's marketing that is inferenced with the other steps that we're doing.
Well, and I think too, my product team might kill me because I might get out of my skis, but yeah, we're putting a new smart newsletter feature where again, we're seeing what people are engaging. Why not deliver in the newsletter back what people are engaging with? So that's the type of stuff that, we're driving that member value.
Right.
Well, I want to talk a little bit. I'm the event guy and we're starting to run thin on time. But attendance forecasting, looking at those reg trends, looking at regional data, to improve forecasting accuracy. I mean, even looking at, where are our members or running zip code analysis. I know some people have been asking us along the way, like, don't actually put the member name in there, look at like zip codes.
Your data. Yes.
Yeah, that's clean data in that
Yes.
sense, and start to say, hey, or again, based on, you mentioned it, Mary, but looking at what are people engaging with on your website, well, you should build your call for papers and your conference around that because it's going to show you what's that kind of
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Optimizing that again, looking at those speaker things, because what did the survey say last year? What are you seeing engaging on your newsletters and on your website or in your community or those sort of things? Because that's all that stuff that takes us humans a long time to pull together that most of us just don't have time to do. And then again, agendas, trying to make sure that you're, creating these things around people and say, hey, based on your interest, here are the speakers you should go see. These are things that AI will create that ability for you to do. And I know finally, Mary, we want to cover, actually, I'm skip that. We kind of want to leave folks some time to ask some questions, but more importantly, I know we're going back to this, Mary, but can you kind of reiterate what we want to do? Because again, our challenge to you is we're going to have another session, no PowerPoints, Mary and I in a room. I know we're going to try to get to some questions today, but we really want to learn from you too. And what are you trying and what can we do? But what's the homework today before we get to questions and
So
let people
I'm
connect with us?
just repeating what we talked about earlier, but I'm learning too. So I'm really excited about this next step when we get together because I think that, we're all on this journey. And like I said before, we've all been kind of like thrown on this path, like it or not, right? So how do we set ourselves up for success? So first, get your policy together, find your champion, upskill, sending out a list of training materials and AI terms. Experiment, somebody had put in there, what if it's over experimenting? Experiment with tools that are solving your pain points. That's what I would recommend in that regard. Don't experiment for the sake of experimentation. Experiment to help life better for you or for your team or for your members bringing value. And then track use cases because I guarantee you, understanding the prompt engineering, what it comes out with, and how you're going to move forward as we move towards agentic AI. I think it's really important to understand what these tools do, and you'll know that by tracking those use cases.
Well, all right, Mary, in the last 4 minutes, like I said, we will stay on longer to try to get through questions to start feeding those. I'm going to try to go back and rifle through a couple of them.
Okay.
I saw Barbara and somebody upvoted it, so I'm going to cover that one. How do you get AI, your Excel data to pull for your event planning? I will say I will throw out a tool. I've done other separate sessions on it. Sparkit.ai. It is an AI tool for event planners and organizers. And so it is, when you look at that, you can upload those things. And again, Mary, to your point, be cautious of what you put. But those are things, most of the paid models, don't use it for training. That's another one that doesn't.
Yeah.
But I encourage you, if any of you manage any part of an event, look at Sparkit AI.
Yeah. It's a great brainstorming tool. You had demoed that 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, it gives you all these ideas and stuff. So yeah.
And I saw Jen said, for what it's worth, Notebook LM is invaluable for use at my chamber. Yeah, I mean, if you have other tools out there, yes, you'll get a recording of this. Mary, someone asked, where are you seeing some of your biggest successes? What are things that, you've really found most usable?
For me personally, it's in the research aspect. I actually have a Chat GPT specifically for research. So I've trained her on, you are an association professional, you have a background in consulting, and I've given this whole persona to this person, to this chat person, and so for me, it's the research aspect for when I am either developing proposals for different services. That's been a huge time saver for me. And I'm not like days, if not weeks of saving time. So I think and also devil's advocate, so they return information to you, use it as in a brainstorming type of fashion. And I found that really useful.
Any areas that you've sort of struggled or you think AI is not there yet? And I want to.
Uh, yes. I mean, we're not there yet with agents, right? I'm waiting for a vendor to come out and develop agents that starts looping some of these functions together, right? Because I want to be able to take the menial tasks that people do that are like, you have to do them every day, but it's not anything that's adding value, but they're necessary. That is an area that I am looking to automate so that we have really talented people. We want them working on things where they can think through the problems and add that member value.
I've also put in the chat our email addresses. We'll share that because we're also going to share out some guides. Rose and I'm going to get to Q&A. Like I said, we're more than welcome to stay on. How can AI find you speakers? Great example. You'd be surprised. Even asking, putting some basic information into some simple ones and say, here's what you're looking at, sparks another one. You literally can identify and ask, hey, I need a speaker on this, and it will spit back and you're like, oh, by the way, can I get their LinkedIn addresses?
Yeah.
That's
You
the
did
kind of,
that with Spark It. I remember your demo because
yeah.
you had a pet industry, which is one of my clients. And I'm like, yeah, that's legitimate.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great when I did a demo of a product. It's not my product, but yeah, and you were like, oh my God, that's right.
Yeah,
Those are the
that's,
people
yes.
you'd want to get. I will throw out too, I know we're at time, but that's a great way to look at even for sponsors or exhibitors for your events. Like sometimes saying, here's, the option out there. Here's like here's some options for you to consider for companies, to exhibit or sponsor. And that's, really, really an amazing tool to think about that. That's what I love is like, those are the questions that I sit there and go, part of me is like, I don't know, let's type it in, send a link to your event website or give a description and say, who would be great exhibitors for this, or who would be great sponsors, or, those are things out there that are really helpful. Are there any template or guidelines for optimizing your data or structuring data to more easily prepare to implement AI further? Any thought for you before I respond to that too?
I would prefer to defer to you because we
Okay.
live in a world in the AMC world where we're working with a number of different AMS CRM things, and so we're looking at that vertically as we go through the process. So
Mary
I'll
just put in
defer to you
also
because
that.
you're the tech guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I know too, we've got a dirty data guide. I'm hoping my team can throw in there too. But, looking at some of that, I would say though, when I talk to our teams, is actually thinking about what is the goal? What's the outcome? What are you trying to get? Because a lot of, when you think about the data structures and things like that, is what's the end goal? Because what I find, there's a lot of data out there, and what's the end goal, or like, why do we collect this? Why, what would help us, get there? And thanks to everyone's joined. There's Mary's Dirty Data Guide. On those, so some other
Yeah.
resources, but that's a great question too. Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, there's someone that had asked, it kind of scrolled by, but about the environmental impact. Yeah, it's a huge concern, right? I read that Google just issued a bold warning about the growing gap between AI demand and American infrastructure. The company unveiled a sweeping energy roadmap alongside a major workforce initiative to train 130,000 electricians while aiming to power the AI boom before the grid buckles. And we already saw the grid buckle in Spain last week. We are going to have an energy issue with this. For me, I'm going to continue still using this. I'm hoping that there's people that are smarter than I am, frankly, who are addressing these issues. But yes, I mean, it is something that is should be on everyone's radar as well.
And I'll throw out Stacy threw out ACCE's Horizon 2035 initiative, and Rebecca Ryan's 10 by 10 the 10 trends for the next 10 years are good resources for future industry influences. Thank you, Stacy, for
Thank
sharing that.
you.
Kenneth asked a great question. For new association manager, what would be the first AI tool you'd recommend?
I think ChatGPT or Claude. You can use both of those have free versions. So if you wanted to sort of just start testing them, again, I would work on your safety guardrails first. I think that's the first step. But they're both great. I mean, there's a lot of people in my company that are using free versions of different things. Again, being very cautious, we make it very clear about what information you can and can't use in it. But a lot of fun, and they're very, very powerful tools.
I'll go back. Hopefully, Amy may still be on. Amy, where we've talked a little bit about being mindful, but comparing whole list of registration to hotel list. Yeah, that's one of those. If you had a paid version, but you could also think about that again as is a great. Yeah, you could do it in Excel, but AI would certainly do it. That's where I would look at some of the tools where you're not training or you're not putting that, or you're being really cautious. I mean, last name is even, obviously identifiable in that case. So
Yeah, yeah. It's
goes.
like drawing the line between lazy and right. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I mean, those are the tough things that, you have
Yeah,
to decide, and is that
absolutely.
against your
Yeah,
policy,
yeah,
or is there a tool
right.
that can use it? Or, I do think more systems will start to look at that.
Well, we're seeing AI in everything, right? I mean, you're all the tools. I mean, Google's moving to AI, Microsoft Teams has got AI, Zoom has AI. All AI is being incorporated into the platforms that we normally use, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of Kathleen's, and that's why I sort of did that demo, because again, the more systems that we can keep in together with those areas that you keep the data, it's a lot easier to do.
And safer because you're
Yeah,
protecting the data. Right, right.
yeah, I think that's, but in part of too, I think it's important to then start thinking about. I love some of the questions that people have asked, because it is a challenge. How do I take this? Um, you know, do the paid versions keep your data secure? A lot of them, well, I
I
mean,
don't know. I mean, yeah,
Target can't keep our data secure. I mean, there's
right,
always,
exactly.
no
I
matter the
think
system.
having cybersecurity in place in case there's a not oh or and your general liability, never say never, right? And I have talked to a number of people who are experts in this on the cybersecurity on and data integrity. They're not so sure they'd be putting information into even the paid versions, right? So I kind of follow that as I go through. You can always strip data that you're putting in if you want to do an analysis, taking out your personally identifiable information or other information that might be contained in there. So think through that, but I err towards caution.
But I think, what we see also, though, a lot of people too are starting to realize that, um, data is so important, and data, and data privacy and things like that. But that's where you want to think cautiously, but you also want to know within these systems what the possibilities are, or again, what can you take out, how can you still get the analysis that you're looking for. I mentioned reg data. Yeah, obviously excluding emails and phone numbers and things like that, but you can still get a lot of information, or surveys that just have sentiment analysis. Take out or include member type. That's sort of the next
Absolutely.
level too, right? Is making sure that you're asking questions that, like, okay, how could I get to this answer without including the PII?
Yeah. Yeah. I had set up a fake association. I used Claude Sonnet 3.7, which I think is their newest version, unless something else came out in last week. But I wanted to play around with its capabilities. And obviously, I didn't want to use any of our client associations. It created a complete database of an association with 800 and some members all over North America. And I was able to play around with that data. So it took me less than 5 minutes to create an association database. So if you want to start experimenting with what some of these tools do, create a fake database and then start manipulating it. And I think you'll learn from it.
Yeah, you'll see in the other sessions that I've done. I've done literally the same thing. I need a survey from an event, like the pet,
Exactly. Right.
and that
Mhm.
that gives you, and that's, I think, kind of goes back. And I know we don't have any more questions. We'll start to wrap up. because I know we're over time. But I think that's the thing too, is when you can see the output in a safe way, or like, wow, we never thought about using that, for that. That's what people are starting to get excited about. It excites me
Yeah.
because you're like,
Yeah.
I think it also then will move you along as an association to say, how do we collect these pieces? Um, and again, I know we're talking a lot about the data, but so much of this isn't data related, I
True.
mean,
True.
there's other ways to use AI that doesn't always land back on that data. But I encourage you, I sort of did that snippet, but to think about connecting membership, events, financial, and that's when you really start to tell a picture that, again, I YouTube how to VLOOKUP and all that stuff all the
Yeah.
time, but that's when you can, when you start to use it creatively. Like you said, Mary, it's not an end all. You still got to go and double check and you still got to do those things, but it
Absolutely.
starts that
Yeah.
journey down there.
Yeah. Are you using anything for like deep search? I know that both Claude Sonnet 3.7 is supposed to be very good. I have not personally used it, but I've also know that ChatGPT has a deep search. So it was asked, do you have any firsthand
No, I mean,
experience?
I've started using Perplexity. Our CEO is a big fan of it. I have a
Okay.
subscription to that. It tends to be more research driven. Dr. Collison being a faculty member back in the day, I,
Yeah.
leave it to him to give me the tool that, so I tend to find Perplexity when I do
Okay.
research and things like that. Tends like it's hard because I also have a paid subscription to ChatGPT, but Perplexity is another tool that I've really started. I will give everyone a website too. There's an AIforthat.com, I think is the official address. Literally is a website. If you type in what you're looking to do, it'll find an AI tool to do it. But I would say that's probably the next adjustment, even in ChatGPT. So much is built in to ChatGPT. So, any other questions? Thank you. Oh, thank you, Mary, for putting that in there. Yeah, there's an
Yeah,
AI.
I mean, I'm a member of ASAE, so I don't know if I'm logged in or not, whether or not it's free. Some of these knowledge systems are set up where you're allowed to ask it X number of questions at a free member, at a free level, and then it's considered a member value. So then you'd have to log in to get additional research done.
Well, and that's why, again, we're encouraging everyone that there's a whole lot of folks that's still stuck on. We're going to reconvene this group because, again, we covered a lot of content. We encourage you to take that one slide, start testing. We want to come back and we want to explore and play and try. Because I think, again, Mary and I are both explorers. Neither of us are
Right,
experts.
right.
We want to come back. Yeah, Kathleen, yeah. Everyone's
And
looking
it's a
forward to that. Mary,
collective.
I'm looking forward to it.
I am too, and we're on this journey together, and again, kind of all got thrown into it, and here we are. So I think it's we can learn from each other as we go along,
Yeah.
right?
Mary, I feel lucky that, and shout out to BSAE and Terry and that entire team who introduced us first on a
Yes,
panel.
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
So thank you, SMG. Thank you for all the work that you do for your clients. Thanks to everyone who's joined us and all the clients. You've got both of our contacts. We've shared out resources. Again, honestly, feel free to reach out to both of us. I know we want to learn from you, or if we didn't get to every question, hopefully we've covered most of it. It seems like lots of applause I see coming
yeah.
across.
Thank
So
you. Thanks. Great program. Thank you. Looking forward to the next, Rich.
yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks again, Mary. Thanks to our
You're
team
welcome.
for making this possible. And good luck on your exploration. Keep
Yes,
us posted.
absolutely. Good luck.
We'll see
Onward.
everybody soon.